So I
Has there
did
been
I did 5 rolls at the beginning of the stream. Before that, I had done 2 rolls, so that's 7 rolls total. If you're wondering like how much effort is kind of involved to get to this level with reasonably comparable luck.
have there been any buckyball attempts at crossing a planet or something?
There have been all kinds of runs from different stations, more local runs. I mean, I think you could look it up. There's been at least a half dozen different runs last I checked, and that was quite a while ago. And so the Sag A run is probably the most popular, most well known, but it's only one of many. And sometimes there are events. I mean, the Sag A run is a ongoing challenge, but there are events that people can join up at live and run the race live. So the total distance traveled here is 26,000 or so light years. And with this jump range, it would basically take about 500, a little under 500 jumps, maybe, depending on how efficient the jumps are, because you don't always get your maximum jump range every time you jump. You know, it depends on the star configuration. You have discrete points you have to jump between, so you get a bit of lossiness from that. And that's part of the planning. Is you could plan jumps for two things. You can plan them for um, having scoopable stars everywhere, or in reasonable uh, frequency, and you can also plan the jumps so that you're getting the maximum range with every jump. And it can take hours, dozens or hundreds of hours to properly plan that. And so this is a blind run. This is completely as I go. We'll see what happens. If I run into a bunch of unscoopables, that'll be a challenge. So this is not a completely pre-planned run, but some people might put a couple hundred hours into planning routes and having set waypoints, basically. And it's actually a hell of a lot easier now because with the bookmarks, that makes the job a lot easier. So might look into doing that in the future. Yeah, it's an unscoopable. Sorry to kind of change the subject, but someone asked a question there.
No worries. I wonder if there's any kind of record keeping on fewest jumps to Sagittarius.
That's an interesting one.
So fewest jumps is probably pretty close to fastest time. It'll be
I don't think
almost
so.
definitely based on
That,
jump range. Okay, I mean
yeah, but
technically one could be very deliberate. Yeah, you could just sit there and say, well, what's my next best jump? And because you're taking so much time to deliberate in the run, you're slow, but you're doing the fewest jumps.
you're
Um,
completely forgetting about Jumponium
okay,
because
yeah.
that will easily double your well that'll
So from what I've
increase your jump range constantly.
So from what I've read on the Buckyball thread, the one who had the best time and the least jumps did not use Jumponium. And
No, no, but that's sort of my point because if you're using that, suppose you make sure you have enough for 500 jumps with level 3 Jumponium, you're suddenly jumping 100 light years at a time instead of 50.
I don't think you can do 500 because there's what is it, 5 or 6 materials required for each one.
Um, yeah, I'm not in my ship right now, so I can't actually check.
Well, when I get a
Fair enough, but
yeah.
that's fair enough. But you're also not doing that many jumps. You're reducing it. If you can jump 100 light years, you're reducing it to 260.
Yep, true. So it's one, two, three, six materials for each one. I mean, one could also have some combination of the level 3 ones and the level 1 ones, though, because those only require 3 each. But I guess considering that it only gives 25%, if you look at the boost per number of materials, probably the level 3s are still the best. Okay, looks like I reached my next waypoint. I'll have to Go another 1,000. So I mean, there are runs that people have done in every ship. Anaconda is clearly the best to do, but people have done it in FDLs. People have done it in Sidewinders, haulers, all kinds of ships. I think the FDL one has the worst time. I think it's a multi-day trip. It was like 17 days. But yeah, so regarding efficiency, yeah, you could sit and plot and deliberate about each jump. And one of the other issues on top of getting maximum range for each is to get as straight a line as possible. Because if you're going off in a little bit of an arc off target, then that's effectively you just don't have 100% efficiency there either. Yeah, who has it? I actually have not. This will be the first time I'm going to Sagittarius A. Not done it before.
Maybe next time we can do how much who can make most merits per hour.
Oh, merits. Sorry, I
Yeah,
heard marriage.
yeah, yeah. So many marriages were actually quite quickly ended by me in order to get these jumps. I found that the most common way of finding the chemical manipulators, which were one of the components for the roll, was to kill wedding barge orcas. Apparently, that's where all the chemical manipulation happens. Yeah, it was in an anarchy system, so I didn't have to worry about a bounty. It's their fault for going to an anarchy system in the middle of a war zone during their wedding.
So what did you get? Chemical manipulators?
Yeah, so the things required for the level 5 roll is two polonium, or sorry, yeah, two polonium, two chemical
Mhm.
manipulators, um, two strange wake solutions,
Yeah.
and magnetic emitter coil. And the magnetic emitter coils you can buy
Yeah.
from systems near, I think, around Leasty area.
I see. By the way, I'm thinking to engineer my Viper MK3. Pretty good.
Yeah, probably improving the jump range would be the first thing I personally would do. But
Yeah, and put on dirty drives to go 500 meters per second.
You can do more than that.
And then, yeah.
I mean, in the beta, I got a combat fit Diamondback scout to 500 constantly,
Uh,
and the Viper can fit the enhanced drives as well.
Yep.
so what are people's experience with dirty drive and clean drive? I don't know much about those mods.
Ray drives a grid.
Don't they generate more heat though?
That's true.
Is it actually a meaningful amount? Because I mean, it's one thing to say it generates more heat on the stats, but does it really have as a practical problem?
Currently, I'm using clean drives.
I would think that on the basis of it, not really, outside of fuel scooping and so on. But if you're running something where you're already close to the power limit, I would expect you to have more issues with dirty drives than clean.
So what kind of velocity differences do you see? Has anyone rolled a high roll? what kind of, because it's hard. It just says optimal multiplier, and then you have to plug it into the formula. And I don't know if that formula is still right. I think it's written somewhere, maybe on the Wikia. But yeah. Does anyone have a
Hmm.
speed adjustment that they got?
My FDL goes for 30 something now and boost.
Yeah, and Chef's does
And what's
464.
the unmodded?
Uh, 387.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's like a
80.
20% mod for chef.
That's only with grade 3, so
Yeah,
How
that's
much?
really good.
How much you can go with Ferdinand?
438, I think.
Hmm.
And chef said he's got a 464.
And Toettles can go 450 with like the
And
heaviest FDL in existence.
that's the dirty drive or clean
Yes.
drive?
30. 30 drive.
Hmm.
It was a half decent roll, but it could have been better.
Yeah, I mean,
I got clean drives on my Federal Assault. I think level 3, and I can go 420.
I really like the idea that people have different stats now, and that different ships have different quirks and positive results. It really gives that like Millennium Falcon sort of feel to things that, hey, look, I may have a YT 1300, but it's not like everyone else's YT 1300. Or not like everyone else who got engineers is and bothered to roll YT 1300. It's truly unique.
Mhm.
So, I mean, if you made it such that basically it was so difficult to level up in engineers and get the good roles that people had to basically make a decision and say, okay, I'm going to really try to be good about this. And my other stats, semi be damned. And I'm just going to have the best, thrusters, or I'm going to have the best shields. And then you just don't have the time. And that sort of adds to an RP element. I mean, that gives an inspiration to, the character of your ship. And I think that people, if people really saw that as what the RND does, RNG does, or what the fact that the materials are tough to find does, then I think they'd be a little less disappointed.
I mean, they people would be less disappointed if RNG wouldn't fuck up your base uh, setup. It would add up a little bit, but it could not make it the best. They would be pretty happy, but problem is it can also fuck up your ship
Well, I
if
mean,
you're not careful.
certainly a key that I'm glad they included was that you can refuse the upgrade. You can both refuse the upgrade, and when you get a better one, you can replace the old upgrade. And
Yeah, but
if you couldn't do that, then there would certainly be a huge amount of issue because someone would have a really good upgrade and they'd say, well, it's not perfect, and then they roll something and they get absolute garbage, and they're like crying because they've destroyed their work.
I mean, for example, there could be if you put certain rare materials, you could get better chances at getting something better. But if you put standard materials,
Yeah,
then
so that I
that's
mean
what you get.
that all that does is basically make the other materials more useful, but it doesn't change the aspect of the grind. Because what will happen is people will say, well, I'm just grinding low-level materials, or I really should get the high-level materials because the low-level materials, they find after they do the efficiency checks that it's just not worth the time. What will happen is people will run numbers and they'll see how much time does it take to get this versus that, and then they'll see one's better than the other, and then it'll still be a grind. Because they're still min-maxing, and when you try to min-max, no matter how you look at it, it's going to be a grind. Unless basically you can max automatically.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's. I think that it brings meaning to the experience. It's caused me to SRV a lot more. It's caused me to do missions a lot more. It's caused me to do a lot of aspects about the game that either I didn't know about or I didn't care about. And I think it's quite interesting, and I'm perfectly happy to live with the fact that I don't have the best roll on something, and that if I
Sure.
really want